It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Gala Greenspan. Your maiden name was Morgenstern, and you were known as Gala. You were born in Germany.
Yeah.
And here in your beautiful home in Efrat in Israel. But you were maybe one of the last Jewish children born in Frankfurt.
In the Jewish hospital. Yeah. Yes. My family came to Frankfurt in the 20s, but both sides came from Poland and had very difficult lives there. Both sides of the family lost their fathers in pogroms, and my grandmother was pregnant at that time with her 5th child, and because of what happened that day, she went into early labor and gave birth to a stillborn child, and the baby had to be buried, and I think it was my uncle, who was 13, had to do all that, what had to be done, buried and so forth. My father's father died on his Friday night of his, he was killed on the Friday night of his bar mitzvah. Now, he never talked about anything, and this particular Friday, I think it was a Friday, he talked about it, and possibly it was the Shabbat of his bar mitzvah. I don't know, that's something I'm surmising, could have been. Anyway, after the First World War, both families independently went to Frankfurt, Germany. They made much better lives for themselves, and all the family, my mother's sister and brother, they were there, and most of my father's siblings were there. I know his mother died in 1936, before the war. I think she was maybe not well, and how they met, actually visiting, my parents met visiting their mothers in the hospital. They were in the same room, and we're not quite sure if it was a shidduch between the two mothers or they just met and so on. And so they both were making their lives. My father had a store. The apartment where they lived after they were married was on top of this store. It was a store where they sold men's underwear and so forth. And my mother was a wonderful seamstress. She had a lot of talent. So did my uncle, who went to England in 1933. So life was good for a few years.
You have a picture of your grandmother?
Oh, yes. This is my grandmother. This was taken in England. We don't exactly know why we didn't ask her, I don't know. But growing up was a bit difficult times. She
was a very religious lady?
Yes, she was. And in fact, we heard about 10 years ago from another grandchild whose family went to Buenos Aires, that after the First World War, there was a big rabbinical convention in Europe, in Germany, and she was asked to go and help. I don't know whether she was supervising or helping with the cooking or what else, we don't know, but it was something we had never heard. Now, after the First World War, I would say in the 20s, both families went to Germany. Oh, I told you that.
So you have a picture of your parents when they got married?
Yeah. I don't know how we got it.
And they were married in Frankfurt?
Yes. Yes. Right.
And your parents, they kept a traditional home?
Oh yes, for sure. As far as I know they did.
And Carmen, you got a beautiful picture of your mother as well. And
yes, I think she was like single there. Actually, where do I have the picture of their engagement? I don't know. Yeah, she probably made that outfit, look, from the 20s. Yeah.
So can I ask, you have the most amazing story when you were born in the hospital.
Right, I was born in a Jewish hospital, and I think probably one of the last Jewish babies born there. Actually, the doctor that delivered me was a Jewish doctor, and he knew that the Nazis were coming for him, and he had a cyanide pill in his pocket, and they came for him, and he took that pill. And how do we know that? Because my daughter found it on the internet somehow. We didn't know his name, we didn't know anything. She found it. Yeah. So that was hard. Now, when my father came to visit my mother while I was still in the hospital, the Nazis came and they picked him up, took him to a concentration camp in Germany called Buchenwald. And he was there for 3 months. Meanwhile, we needed a visa to leave the country. After 3 months in Buchenwald, for some reason they were going to let about 1,000 or so men out of the camp. But in order to do that, you needed a visa to leave the country within 24 hours. And my mother, who was waiting for a visa from her brother, who had left for England in 1933, was waiting for this visa. So the story goes that she left me in the hospital and got out of a window, out of a door. No one saw her. She went to the British consulate to pick up this visa, and she did. She came back, and in March he was let out, and we left the next day within 24 hours. I had two siblings, 2 sisters, my sister Sonia, the oldest, and my sister Zelma, the middle sister, and myself, Gala. And we all left together. We didn't go on the kinder transport. And they probably took whatever they could. And while on the train, babies were put in a basket. They had wicker baskets in those days for babies, and the Nazis came on the train. And he came to my mother and he said, "What do you have there?" She said, "I only have my baby." But if he would have looked further, he would have seen her Shabbat candles. And I guess that was quite a risk, but it must have meant a lot to her. And he didn't look further, and Baruch Hashem, we all made it out to London. When we got to London, the same uncle had sent a lot of visas for other members of the family, and they moved to northwest London, Willesden Green, Crickerwood, and they had a house there, a rented house with lots of rooms, but everybody was sort of living there, and must have been very difficult for so many people together, and one kitchen, and not so easy. Eventually we rented an apartment a block away for just our family. Now, September 1939, the war started. So it was very difficult times. My mother had tuberculosis, and we're not sure when she actually got this tuberculosis. It's sort of a discussion I had with my sisters before they passed away in the last few. Well, my middle sister passed away, unfortunately, of cancer when she was 60, and my older sister, Sonia, passed away 3 years ago. And I just want to put in here, we lived different lives. We were separated. My sister lived in America. My older sister lived in America, and my middle sister lived in England, and I lived all over, and eventually coming on Aliyah. But my sister and I, in the last 10 years, spoke to each other every day for maybe 30 minutes. And I don't know, people used to say, "What do you talk about?" We always had so much to talk about, just finding out how we are. That was our first conversation, how the family is, and then from there.
So in this picture, how old were you in this picture?
This was taken, I think, before my mother died, because she died when I was 5. She died in 1943 during the war.
Because of her illness?
Yes, she was in a, what do they call it? In a special hospital, sanatorium. And very difficult for my poor father. He couldn't speak the language, he couldn't find work. It was, he had a very hard time. Anyway, before this happened, before she passed away, the war started, and all children were evacuated out of London. Somehow we ended up in a place, the whole family, well, not my father. My father, I think, stayed in London to work, but my mother, my grandmother, and my 2 sisters, we ended up in a place called Kettering. And it was a husband and wife They took us all in. I can't tell you how long we were there. I was about, I'm figuring 18 months. And they ended up taking Zelma as an evacuee. We went to other places, my other sister, because my mother went back to the hospital. My older sister went to a place called Peterborough, which is where I eventually went. What happened with me was I was too young to go anywhere at the time, and my grandmother took care of me because my mother was in the hospital. The bombs were flying in London, bombing all over. And she used to take me to the bomb shelters. Wasn't like we have here. And one Friday night she took me. How I know it was Friday night, because I had a very good friend in Yerushalayim who was over 100, and I used to visit her once a week. And when I told her the story, she said, yes, I remember that Friday night, because she came from that area. Anyway, my mother took me, and I cried all night. And the people said to my grandmother, don't bring this baby here tomorrow night, because it was very nerve-wracking, I would assume. Anyway, the next night, that bomb shelter was bombed. Yeah.
And the people most probably were killed.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Hashem has been with me a lot.
And he saved your grandmother as well.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway,
Gala, can I ask, what is your earliest recollections? What is your earliest
my
memories?
earliest recollection is when I was evacuated. I cannot... my father lived, longer than my mother, but he died also young. He died when I was 15. But I don't remember my mother. She was a very special person, they say. And, we had to go on. There was this woman, there was a family next door to where my sister was, this Capps family, who let us stay there for, I don't know how long we were there.
A non-Jewish family?
Non-Jewish family, yeah. And my sister ended up, they had no children, and she ended up staying there. But with me, there was a family next door to this Capps family, and an aunt was visiting this family next door. The decision was I was going to go to an orphanage. That was, because who's going to take a young child? This is a couple of years later than this situation, because I was about 2.5. And this woman heard of the story. Now, she came from the same place as where my sister was, Peterborough. And she said she would take me. Now, this woman must have been in her 50s, because she had an adult son and grandchildren. And she had lost her husband not too long before that. She was a wonderful woman to me, wonderful person. She took care of me for 2.5 years. And they wanted to keep me, and they wanted to keep my sister, the other family. My father had to quickly come and take us away. But my mother asked my father to a request before she died that we should get a Jewish education. And he did that. It wasn't easy, but he did that. And as I said, I stayed with Mrs. Stapleton for 2.5 years, and they had we would call it like a little macolet in their house.
Like a grocery.
Grocery. And they also had a bakery in the backyard where the son baked bread. And he was considered, I don't know what the word is, he didn't have to go in the army because his job in the town was so important, baking bread, selling, having a store. And he also did a milk round, somehow in my mind I remember that. And so I stayed there for 2.5 years. And then...
Do you have any recollections?
Oh yes, I have a few recollections.
And your father came to visit you?
He did, but I can't remember specifically when he came or what happened.
And your sisters?
Well, my sister happened to live quite near me, but they used to say to me, "Your sister's coming to visit." But I didn't understand what the word sister meant, because I don't remember living, together like that. And yeah, that was quite sad, but she came to visit me. I don't remember specifically, but she said she used to come, and they had a piano, and the family was quite musical. It didn't come to me, but in Germany, my father used to play a violin. I have a picture of him there. And my sister played the violin, and my older sister. In fact, when we had been there a few weeks, the shul in Willesden Green, Warm Lane, I don't know, it's not there anymore. It was a beautiful shul because we grew up there. They asked her to come and play the violin, and she played the Hatikva, she always said. But I don't know that we knew what the Hatikva was, and it's a good question, right? But this was in 40s, beginning of the war. Anyway, there was a school in London called the Avicta High School, Rabbi Shumford. You've heard of Rabbi Shumford. Now, when the war came in 1940, after the war came, as I said, children were evacuated from London. They evacuated this whole school, Jewish school, started by Rabbi Shumford's father, and the school was in North London, and they evacuated the whole school to a place called Shefford. It was a small village. These people had never seen Jews before. There was a building in this village called the White House. Now, the White House was nothing like Washington, okay? It was a little building, okay? That's where the children had their main meals. They brought kosher food. It was, they were German Jews, most of the people that were running this school. The principal was Now I have a blank. Okay, I'll carry on. The children lived with families in this village. The school, the classes were in different places. Some was in this White House, and some were even in church buildings. They had teachers, they had regular curriculum, and they did an amazing job. Now, my sisters went to this school maybe in about 1943, 44. They were there before me. They didn't live with the same people. They lived with different families. I came to the school in just a few months before the end of the war in 1945, because I think I was too young. I don't remember going to school. I don't remember anything that I did. But I think my father was afraid they would abduct me, or take me away. She wanted to keep me. She really loved me, and I only knew her. I didn't really remember my family. And but my father came, and he took me to Shefford, and they probably just took me, and I stayed. I know the name of the lady that I stayed with. Her name was Mrs. Cherry, and I wasn't happy there. And thinking about it as I became an adult, she wasn't the most, my memories of her, she wasn't the most lovable person, and she probably didn't care for me, and I probably missed Mrs. Stapleton, who was so kind and good to me. Anyway, we stayed there until the end of the war. Was
the principal Judith Greenfield?
Yes, I could. I just loaned the book. I'm embarrassed to have forgotten her name.
No, it's just Judith. She was
amazing.
Very special lady.
Very special lady, and she had a nickname. They called her the Queen, because she was always put together. She was a beautiful woman, and she was always put together well. And thank you for reminding me. I just had a complete blank.
And you remember her?
Oh yes, I remember her.
Did Rabbi Schoenfeld ever come down to the school?
He did. I don't remember specifically that he came. I can't remember that. I don't remember much of Shefford.
And do you remember being with your sisters in Shefford?
Only my older sister. I don't remember Zelma too much, and I don't know why.
And your father, did he manage to come and visit?
He managed to come, apparently. I don't remember. He could have come before I got there. And the story was that when they gave him the food, it was so bad to him that he went outside and threw up. That was the story. I don't think I put it on the other talk that I gave the other day. And eventually we went back to London, and we continued with Dr. Schoenfeld's school, and we also were in the hostel. He had a hostel for children who came from the Holocaust and who he went to save after the war. He went to different orphanages, and there were Jewish children there. And the way I was told was that he would go around and say the Shema, because that was one thing little children could remember. I'm sure there were many that didn't get out. They stayed with their, foster parents or whatever. or they just kept them in this orphanage, you know. So I'm sure we've lost a lot of our children that way.
Gally, if I can mention, I've met quite a few of the survivors that he personally saved.
Yes.
Before the war and after the
yes, he did.
war. And there was one case, Alex Rosen, Rabbi Rosen, that he saved him after the war, and they tried to get his sister, and the family that were holding the sister refused to give her over.
Yes.
And they couldn't save her. But they saved Alex, and he became a rabbi. And
yeah, amazing.
Thank God to Rabbi Schoenfeld.
Right.
He was an incredible, unsung hero.
Really, yeah. Actually, many years ago, we were still living in Jerusalem, they celebrated his 100th birthday, and they had a get-together at Yad Vashem. Do you know about that?
I heard about it.
Yes.
You were there?
Pardon? I was there.
Attended.
Yes, I was there. So he was an amazing man. And my sisters eventually, you know, we got older and left the hostel. I stayed, you know, much longer because I was much younger. And yeah, it was quite an experience.
Did your father ever remarry?
No, he didn't. What happened, he did have a friend who I think he wanted to marry, but he didn't. I think he had nothing to offer somebody. I think that could be. And he had 3 girls, and he had difficult time finding work. He did become a waiter, and he then became the head waiter in a kosher restaurant in the East End of London, and he worked there for a while.
Do you remember the name of the restaurant? Could it have been Bloom's?
No, it wasn't Bloom's, no.
But
no. Yeah, I know.
It must have been very hard for your father, coming from Germany, where he was so well respected, to a country where he didn't know the language. Did he manage to speak English eventually?
Very little. What happened in 48 to 49, he found that his brother survived. He had hidden in Poland with other members of my family in like a farmhouse in the same village that they grew up. They knew the people, and he was always a clever businessman, this uncle of mine, my father's brother. And my uncle came back from the village, you know, when he was liberated, and he decided to go back to Frankfurt. He had lost his first wife, and he had remarried after the war, and he went back into the business that he had before the war. He sold fabric material, and somehow he went to some of his old customers. From 1945 to 1950, he made a lot of money, because people needed fabrics. There were no, you know, they didn't have so many stores yet, ready-made clothes, so people bought material, sewed it themselves, or went to, you know, dressmakers and tailors. Anyway, he asked my father to come back to Frankfurt so he could help him out. So my father went back to Frankfurt in 48, 49, and was working in the business. And he was able to send us back, money to help us live. It wasn't easy for him. He did come back. He flew, actually. There were flying planes already then. And so that wasn't easy. But unfortunately, he had a heart attack at 51. I think it was 1954. And he died. Yeah.
And it's so difficult, you and your sisters.
So and then my grandmother was getting older. She had been living with us for a while, but then she moved to a different place, and we were alone. And somehow, I don't know, we were very influenced by Dr. Shumford. We remained from. And when my sister got old enough, she worked. And my middle sister also eventually worked, and eventually I worked. But we were living in that same apartment in Wollstonecraft.
And who supported you when your father passed away?
I don't know exactly. Before we worked, I think my uncle sent us money.
And Gala, was the Jewish community very supportive?
No. I've never said that before. And we only thought about it later. We just took it for granted. No.
Were you invited to the homes of...
Never. We went to shul every Shabbat. I know.
Is this in North London?
Northwest. We still lived in Willesden Green, but went to school in North London. But we would come home for Shabbat.
And nobody in the shul would invite you over?
No. I don't know. There were difficult times for people.
Everyone, yeah.
It wasn't the same as today, come over for Shabbat. You have...
Did you make a lot of friends?
Yes. We had a lot of friends.
And were they mainly also refugees that had come from Europe?
No.
Or
we still had friends from the hostel. Yeah, even when they left the hostel, left the school. We did still have those friends, but my older sister went to there was a club in Hampstead. Where was it? No, can't think now. It was a club for refugee boys who came from Poland with no parents. And it's called Primrose. I think there was a documentary about it. It was amazing. A few hundred boys who came over with nobody, and many of them were very successful in business. And they helped each other out. Some had psychological problems, and a couple very bad. And later in life, they would...
There's also the Windermere. They would also... There's another... they took them to the Windermere and they...
Yes. Yeah, that was maybe when they were younger. But then when they came to London, I still have one friend, Maya Stern, his name is. He married my neighbor, and he's 94 now. He's not too well. And he also was very successful and was a very good friend of mine, and still is. I talk to his wife every week. Yeah, they're getting older now, but he ended up going into the art business, and he had art gallery. He had a gallery on Gordon Street in Tel Aviv for a very long time, until they had to get out of the building, and then his daughter took over a little bit. Yeah. So, yeah, we did. But then we had other friends. When I finished school and was old enough, I got involved, and my middle sister did too, with an organization called FZY, Federation of Zionist Youth. And we made a lot of friends there. And I don't know, we made friends. We met people in the underground. They looked like they were Jewish, and we just met people.
You remained close with your two sisters?
Very close. I'm very close now. My sister's husband also passed away too early, and they had one daughter, and this daughter was married with 3 children. She has come on Aliyah, and where's my phone? I have to find my phone. And two of her children came on Aliyah. She has grandchildren, and one of her sons lives in Modi'in, and she lives in Renana, and her daughter lives in an apartment 2 doors away from her, and she still has one son in London. But we are very close. We came here to Israel, and Ari had 2 children at the time, and that was all we had. Eventually my daughter came, and she had 1 daughter, and then she had another daughter, Baruch Hashem, in Israel. We are now, when we meet a few times a year, we're like 25 people. I'll have to get that picture for you. And we're very close to my great nephew and my great niece, and yeah, it's just amazing. Everyone's had children, and
Gala, can I ask, what happened to the remainder of the family in Poland?
Okay.
Do you know what happened to?
Yes.
Or even in Germany?
No, they all came to Germany. Most of them came to Germany on my mother's side, and we had one picture. I don't have it at my fingertips. Would have been the last picture that they took. Where only my sister was born, my older sister. One sister went to Buenos Aires. They were married with a child, and then another sister went to, they started off in Israel actually, and it was too difficult for them and couldn't find work, and they ended up in Switzerland. And the third sister, my mother, in London, and then my uncle, the brother of my mother, as I said, went to England in 1933. And we are in touch with all these. We are now on the 3rd generation from the family in Switzerland who are learning here this year. And they come for Shabbat to my daughter. And we're hoping that these 2 young girls who came this year are going to make Aliyah from Switzerland. The family from Buenos Aires, one of their daughters came on Aliyah, and she went and then she came to Ari a lot. My children are very hospitable, and they've been going, to them. They make them very comfortable and family. And she went to New York and ended up marrying an Israeli and eventually came back, and she lives in, okay, I'm having a senior moment again, but we're in touch. Not so much now, but yeah.
Wonderful.
So we're a very great family. Great family.
Can I ask, what made you decide to go to America when you were 21?
Okay. So my sister married an American. He's actually came from Germany, but he had gone to America and she met him. She met him actually in Germany. She had gone back. After my father died, she went back for a while to work in the business also. But they got married, and he was in the Air Force, and he decided to get out of the Air Force, and he had a job working for my uncle from Frankfurt, who had come to New York and had invested in a few hotels. He became so wealthy, very generous, and his goal in life, he had lost all his brothers. My father was probably the last brother that passed away, and the goal in his life was to take care of all his siblings' children. He had a cousin of mine went to Australia, and I had a cousin in Petah Tikva, and she had a sister, and he helped everybody. He helped everybody. He was amazing. And his wife, which was his second wife, was wonderful. Yeah, just helped us. And so she went to America. So at the time, a cousin of mine bought a house in the same area, in Woolston Green area, and Selma and I were still in the apartment, plugging along, and we decided that we wanted to all be together again, my sisters, and that at the time we made the decision we didn't have connections with anybody, okay? It just so happens my sister had a boyfriend a little later on after our decision, and nothing was coming of it. And 3 days before we left London, they became engaged. But he decided he would come follow us and try and live in America. My sister told me 25 years later that she really didn't want to leave at that point because she was afraid maybe he would change his mind. He was young. His parents didn't want him to go. In 1960, you just didn't get on an LL plane and get a ticket back forward. No, it wasn't like that. We went by ship to America, actually. But she didn't want to let me down. But he did follow her, and they got married there. And then so my story is we came there, and the two husbands were working for my uncle. And a year later, they were working in a place, do you know America? Do you know Connecticut at all? There's a town called Bridgeport. That's where my husband's from. My uncle had bought another hotel in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and they were all working for him for a short while. They hadn't been there long at all. And I was living in New York and working, and living at another hotel that my uncle owned. He was amazing. And there comes Shavuos. It was a 3-day Chag. And my sister said to me, look, we don't want you. I didn't know too many people at this stage. It was 61. We came in 60. And they said, come to Bridgeport for Shabbat. They had just really been there a short while, and they had found this shul where we could walk to, and it was in like the old part of Bridgeport. And I said, no, I don't want to come because I'll have to leave late after Shavuos. It's late, and I have to come back to New York and on the train, and I wasn't too happy about that. And they convinced me to come. We went to shul. Now, my husband had a very friendly mother, and she saw not too many visitors came to this neighborhood anymore. The shul eventually moved to a better neighborhood. And she came and said, who are you? What are you doing here? She said, you know what? Come back to my house for Kiddush. And there was my husband, her son, and he was going back to New York, to yeshiva. And, as my grandchildren said, the rest is history.
And how many years were you married?
62. Yeah, it's a year and a half now. Yeah, it is difficult, but I learned to go on, like I guess something's still in me from my younger days. And eventually my middle sister and her husband just didn't go well for them in America, and they decided to go back to England, and it has a happy ending. He was in the young fellow. Originally he was in the learned jewelry business, selling and so on. And he became a very wealthy man, did very well, and very charitable. He was also the president of JNF for about 10 years in England. And so they settled in England, but now their children are here. My niece is in Renana and all that. Just amazing how life has been. My sister stayed in America and didn't have an easy life again. And lost a son to sickness, and lost her husband as a young man, and then remarried. And, not easy, but.
And Gala, can I say, you went back to Germany with your husband?
Oh yes, I was asked to go back through this organization that brought people that were born in Germany to go back as their guests of the German government. And even the next generation, my daughter went with her husband, and even my grandchildren went another year. Yeah. And my sister's grandchildren.
And how was emotionally going back to Germany?
Well, I think because I didn't know what happened, they treated us very well. It was emotional, for many reasons, but we did it. And some parts were difficult, and other parts, they made it very. I spoke actually in one of the schools, the public schools
in
there.
Germany.
Yeah.
And did your sisters remember the home that they were?
My older sister did.
Did she ever go back to the apartment?
The building wasn't there. The number was there because we passed it, but it had been bombed during the war. yeah. We went back to the...
And you have the Yellow Star, the original...
Oh, the Yellow Star is a different story altogether. The Yellow Star, when my husband was a chaplain, one year, Yom HaShoah, a few of the non-Jewish chaplains approached him and asked him if it would be a good idea to have a Yom HaShoah memory evening to teach the people they didn't know, the soldiers didn't know anything about. This was, I would say, maybe in the 70s. You know, nobody there really knew what happened in the Holocaust. And so that's what he did. He worked with the non-Jewish chaplains, and they had this evening planned. And all of a sudden, 2 Jewish soldiers who were not connected to our Jewish program showed up. They didn't know each other. And they were both born in DP camps in Germany. And one of them, this was his father's, and he gave it to us that night. The 2 didn't know each other. They didn't identify as Jews, the whole...
Really?
No. After that, I think they started coming to our program. Yeah. They were just... And they, you know, they were called up to the American Army. And that's how we got it. And I kept it. And I know few people felt uncomfortable with it when they came to the house. But I
think it's so important.
So important, yes. That's what I believe. Yeah. So that's basically what happened to us.
And if I can ask you, what message do you impart to your children and grandchildren and to the future generations?
My grandchildren are amazing. I have this granddaughter who usually comes on Thursdays. Today she couldn't come. They're so interested in my story. And I feel, for my own children, I didn't tell them anything. I didn't want them to feel something would happen to me. My parents dying young. That, you know, when I was young and I had these I had the Ari and Dina, I didn't talk too much about them. But my grandchildren, I've been talking more to them, I think, than I did my own children. And they're all fascinated with the story. How did we manage? How did you go to shul? How did you know? And how did you cook? And how did you survive? You mean you only had 5 pounds to... How did you do it? I said, I don't know. We did it. And just being together, the 3 of the children, my sisters and I, was very important. And we did get together quite a lot in our adult lifetime. My sister from London would come to Israel, and yeah.
And you're happy you came to Israel, that you made Aliyah?
I'm very happy, but it was not my dream, even though I was involved with the Zionist movement. I really didn't think I would come and live here. My husband came to Israel in 1958 on a youth movement from America. It was the first Jewish youth movement from all over the spectrum that came on a a vacation. 8 weeks he was here. 8 weeks, and he toured the whole country, and then they, had big meetings together. All these children, all these young people, college age, from all over the world. And it was his dream to come back to Israel when he finished his schooling. But life came in between. I came in between. And he actually had a ticket to come for the year. They said he had a job, teaching. He got a job teaching English. But what happened, he met me. And in those days, he had a commitment to the American Army as a chaplain. He said to them, "I'll come back after a year, and I'll go into the chaplaincy," because at the time that he was in school, he wasn't married, so they took each denomination in conservative, Orthodox, and Reform had to send 2 chaplains, and they only sent the unmarried ones. So now he met me, and we couldn't afford to go to Israel, let's say. I don't know, today you wouldn't think twice, we'll come to Israel for the year, right? But that didn't work, in those days. So he went to do his commitment in the army, which was supposed to be 2 years. And he decided he liked the work with young people, and we stayed 20 years. So then when he retired, he had a job with the New York Federation, and he got sick. He got Bell's palsy. Do you know what that is? Your face drops. And we weren't sure whether it was a stroke, or we didn't know about, Bell's palsy. And he went to the doctor. It was hard for 3 months, And then he said to me one day, his father had died that year, so his mother was alone. And he said, you don't know what happens from day to day. And I think we should now think about going on Aliyah. So I said, what? Anyway, we came here for 3 months to see whether I could settle here and get used to it. And we came back in Aliyah. And I'm very happy we did. We had a wonderful life in Yerushalayim, made many friends, and the family eventually, Ari was here the year before, and Dina came after. We have just 2 children. And as I said, our family has grown.
And did you ever think, coming from Germany, what happened in the war with the anti-Semitism, that today we'd be experiencing a worldwide reoccurrence of this terrible scourge of anti-Semitism?
Some people said in America, but you never believed it, It could happen here. This was in the 60s. And I thought, how could it happen here? I felt I felt more Jewish in New York than I did in London. London, you're always looking in the back of you somehow, But to me, everybody seemed Jewish in New York, and very comfortable, even though I didn't know too many people then. But no, I'm very happy how my life had turned out. I'm very fortunate. Hashem has been really good to me. I have wonderful children, wonderful son-in-law, wonderful daughter-in-law. everybody treats me so well.
Well, it's been such a pleasure to be here, and I just want to thank you. But Gala, it really has been amazing, your story, the miracles.
Yes.
And that your mother left the hospital. I mean, these are stories that are just unbelievable. Looking back in hindsight, it's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. I don't know how it would, as an adult, how I would be, you know.
So this is a book about Rabbi Schoenfeld, Solomon Schoenfeld, who you knew personally, and you're actually in the book.
Yeah.
So there's a picture of the survivors.
Okay, I marked it so if this is me. I look about 10. This is my middle sister, and this was my older sister. She's still alive, Frida Korupkin. Ever heard of her before? She's in California. She wrote her story. I don't know what happened to the book. Somehow I haven't seen it since I moved. But she also wrote other books. Yeah. She's still in California, and I'm in touch with her.
And from this picture, are there any other survivors that are still alive?
I don't think so. I don't know. You know, I was one of the youngest. I don't know who this is. No. She came to Israel, and she has a daughter living in Efrat. She was on most of them were on the kinder transport. Mm-hmm. These could be Polish boys, you know.
And this is from the book, his page in history, Solomon Schoenfeld.
Mm-hmm.
So there is in Stamford Hill, in Schoenfeld Square,
there's a Schoenfeld Square?
That Ita Zimmerman helped establish. And they've got a statement where they ask him, how many people did you save? He said, that's not the question. The question is, how many people did we not manage to save?
Right.
He was so modest, and he was such an incredible person.
Yeah, that was his life. Yeah.
So this is a picture in Panama.
In Panama, yeah, we were stationed in Panama.
And your husband was also in Vietnam and in Korea as a chaplain.
He wasn't in Korea during the war, but he was in Vietnam during the war.
But later he went to Korea as well.
He went to Korea first in 63. Vietnam in 66.
It's amazing.
Okay.
So Gala, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. This has been such an unbelievable experience being with you. I think your story is just incredible. It really is. That you cried and that they said, don't come back the next night. That saved your life and your grandmother. It's just, it's amazing.
Yes, it did.
Your life is filled with miracles, and you're so positive, and you know, thinking that your parents died when you were very young, and you made a life for yourself and a very successful life, and it's just so wonderful to see
helped
this.
Me. There's no doubt about that. He was there with me, still with me.
Well, you should just have mazal and bracha from your wonderful family. You've got Anna Ari for many, many years, and your daughter I met as well, and you should just have mazal and bracha. And I'm so incredibly grateful to you.
Thank you for taking the story down.
It's been the greatest honor and privilege. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.